What's the good word, y'all? DKB here, and my mind is absolutely blown. Elijah Moore has officially requested to be traded from the New York Jets. He's the second wide receiver to do so. Ian Rappaport first reported it, from my understanding. Connor Hughes ends up confirming the trade request is legit a few moments ago. Now, taking a look at the situation as a whole, if we go back to just last week, we beat the Packers. We're coming off a huge win where we absolutely blow them out in the second half. And we get the cryptic tweet, which isn't really cryptic, from Elijah Moore um, in regards to something that Rich Cimini posted, the stat that's been going viral, that he's been targeted 0 times in the Packers win. Technically, he was targeted once, but it ended up falling incomplete, and there's a penalty that negated it anyways. So, when we take a look at kind of what's been happening with him, Moore is the only wide receiver on this Jets roster who's been in every game in the starting lineup, and he's sixth in the team in catches at this point, and he is somewhere between. I haven't looked for the most updated one yet, but he's either fifth or sixth in targets on the team. It's pretty crazy. I mean, last year he finished 43 receptions, 538 yards, 5 touchdowns. He doesn't look like he's anywhere on pace to beat any of those numbers. And you can point the finger at Zach Wilson. You can point the finger at, Mike LaFleur with how he's utilizing Elijah Moore. You can point the finger at maybe the offensive line, but things have been turning around. And coming off that win, it was already a little bit of a red flag for a lot of us. That he would finally speak on that in regards to his lack of productivity in this offense after a win. If it came after a loss or something like the Jairi Alexander comment for the Packers, that makes a lot more sense now, especially after what the New York Jets did. But even before that, coming off the loss to the Giants. And it's even worse considering Denzel Mims has quietly not made any complaints, noise, anything to kind of shake the morale of the room. And he requested his trade way back in the preseason. So it's kind of it kind of gives you this diva mentality that's kind of feeling like it's starting to build with Elijah Moore, and the fact that, keep in mind, in college he was that entire Ole Miss offense to a certain degree. And we start the season off with Joe Flacco, and even though they weren't connecting as often as they were, he was still receiving quite a bit of targets, and then you see it fall off a cliff when Zach Wilson comes back. So there are a lot of concerns on the front office coaching staff side of things. Joe Douglas, at least from the reports that I'm seeing, they're not willing to move forward with any kind of trade request. They're going to stand pat, as they have done with Denzel Mims as well. But you have to imagine Joe Douglas is at least starting to draw the line of what does compensation look like for what we would accept in an Elijah Moore trade. AJ Brown, there's also been this whole situation with kind of his close family friend circle. He left practice today, or never showed up. I'm not quite sure what all was happening with it, but either way, he wasn't at practice. And there were some mixed reports. Robert Saleh was kind of saying it was a family/personal day. And then others like Rich Cimini and Connor Hughes were kind of reporting that there's no, family emergency or anything like that. It's more so with everything that was going on with him feeling like he's not a legitimate part of this offense, he took the day to kind of be with his family. Either way, that on his own did not necessarily concern me whatsoever. A lot of us, deal with a lot of stress. Even them playing at the highest level and all the demands and stuff that they have, you have to imagine it's even that much more pronounced for them. But then we immediately, I won't say immediately, but within a few hours, then we start getting these reports that he's confirming a trade request. And my heart dropped when Connor Hughes officially tweeted that it was confirmed. So I'm not quite sure how it plans out. My immediate thoughts is that with Denzel Mims, again, he hasn't made any noise. He hasn't done anything to shake up the culture of this locker room or anything like that. Does that mean that he finds his way onto the starting unit? Maybe heading into this matchup against the Broncos. It does give us another element. Denzel Mims is a plus blocker. We seen what he was doing in the preseason in the huge game he had against the Giants. It adds another dimension to us. Not only do we now have Corey Davis, who can block and has been a consistent part of this offense, we would also have Denzel Mims and all of the Julio Jones athletic traits that he brings to the offense. And you'd have to imagine by now he definitely has a very strong understanding of the scheme and what we're looking to do. So maybe we shift him up and we put Elijah Moore to the bench for now. I don't imagine that Elijah Moore would refuse to want to play in games. But it's a very interesting situation. I'm going to have to kind of sit on this and really put my full thoughts together and kind of how I imagine this playing out. But trade deadline is coming up in a week and a half. The league is on notice. There's a lot of teams out here that are suffering. I mean, we've been getting a lot of matchups with the Giants and the Packers, and that was just when Denzel Mims had his trade request on the table. So maybe now that opens up the path for one of these teams to make a significant offer to us. You'd have to imagine Elijah Moore drafted in the second round. He was considered a first round talent. I would assume the starting bid starts no lower than a first round pick. And he can probably finesse something not as crazy as the Jamal Adams trade. But you would have to imagine Elijah Moore is a plug and play instant producer on any offense in the league, which is kind of buying into that frustration that he has with Mike LaFleur, which, by the way, LaFleur's comments I completely understand. But when you have a situation and you have to kind of think about the worst case scenario with what is going to happen here, I feel like there should have been, and it's hard to guarantee anything, but you would have to imagine that you at least give him some confidence that you're going to be able to get him getting some production in there. Is he going to get a 100-yard game immediately? Maybe not. But at least say, look, here's a package of plays that we have in effect, something. Instead, he kind of gave the overall coach speak in terms of production can happen in a number of different ways. You know, here's Corey Davis is now he blocks. Here's CJ Uzoma, who also was expected big things up, but he's been contributing more in the run game and how he's opening up plays for everybody else. Braxton Berrios with his jet sweeps and, you know, his ability to go out there in the slide and kick return and things like that. So I wouldn't want to hear it either if I was Elijah Moore, and that's not necessarily my mold and things that I'm used to. I just want to go out there, get my targets, put up my numbers, and help this team get a W. So we'll see how more of this evolves. But I'm kind of fully expecting that he might be relegated to the bench after a certain point because, yes, he'll probably want to play. I don't think he'll diminish his value that way. But if he ends up becoming a locker room culture or a locker room cancer, Robert Saleh and them aren't going to let that fly. So we'll see what happens. Let me know what your guys' thoughts on the situation are. I'm extremely disappointed in kind of how this has devolved as rapidly as it has. But we'll stay tuned with more news. So I'll catch you guys again. Peace.